Welcome to episode 102 of the Grip Strip podcast, Gumby's Triumph IndyCar F1 and more edition of the Grip Strip podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm here with my co-host Josh Fine. What's going on, man?
I'm doing great, Phil. We had a great Indy or Daytona 500. Almost said Indy 500 there because we were just talking about Indy for the pre-race, or but everything. But no, it was a great Daytona 500. But there was a lot of wrecks and stuff. We'll get into it. Debut of the NextGen car, some of the parts issues, wheels falling off, all that sort of thing. Things that maybe they wouldn't have expected, but we'll get into it as we go into the Daytona 500. And then, of course, we'll talk about IndyCar and then a little bit of Formula One in the roundup and all the other racing series. But glad to be back on show for another week, and as we begin episode 102.
Yeah, we got 2 episodes in last week. We were able to get them out there, and we thank you all for listening. Props to my buddy Scott, who said I said something about Miller Lite, which in a negative way, which is crazy considering that I consume way too much of it to talk about it in a negative light. I thought it was like I probably made a comment about Keystone or Busch because it was like the Busch Light Clash or something like that. But whatever, I'll give him. He's got better hearing than I do. So, and when I'm doing this show half the time, I'm probably guilty of not listening to what the hell I'm saying. But with that, we're going to go over the Daytona 500, which saw Gumby, Austin Cindric, get his first career Cup Series win. He's one of the youngest drivers ever to win the Daytona 500, I figure. That's, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like what for Austin Cindric, like what year is. That's I'm going to look at it. Yeah, he's 98, so oh God, he's 23 years old. He's in his 8th Cup start. He's 23 years old. He might be the youngest guy to ever win the Daytona 5. Oh, no, Trevor Bayne. That's right.
Trevor
Bayne
20 years
was
old.
20 years old. Okay. I was like,
Because
oh,
that
man,
was his
he's got
birthday,
it.
too.
Yeah. It was like birthday the day before or something or whatever the heck. And then, so Cindric's the second youngest, I guess, because Gordon was the youngest forever, 25 when he won in 97. So I'm like, oh, yeah, he's got to be like the youngest guy ever. And I just remembered about Trevor Bayne. So, yeah, second youngest winner ever of the Daytona 500. First race in the 2-car, 8th career start. He goes out there and wins. It's his 3rd win for Penske in the Daytona 500 in the last 15 years or whatever, basically, or 14 years or whatever. Every 7 years, it seems, or 20 years, whatever. I don't know how that math works. Or, yeah, it's 15 years. Every 7 years since 2008, the Penske cars won. 2008, when the soul-crushing defeat for Tony Stewart when he gave it away to No Neck and Kurt Busch. 2015 for Pizza Face, and then Sunday, which saw a bunch of my favorite drivers finish right behind Austin Cindric. The thing that could have been the cleanse, the inbred cleansing if Bubba Wallace had closed the deal. It was close. He finished second. Chase Briscoe gets his best career finish in 3rd, and Brian Blaney had a chance to win that race yet again, but decided that a team win was better than him winning, which is interesting. Eric Almirola, and what he says is going to be his last Daytona 500. Florida guy, has won at this racetrack before. Got sent for the Daytona 500 a few years ago by Bald Spot Dylan. Finished 5th after starting 38th after he had to go to a backup car. Briscoe had to go to the back because he had failed inspection twice. So he went back multiple times. Cindric actually spun him out, sent him to the back. He got a speeding penalty before that, went to the back. So he went to the back 3 times on Sunday and made it to the front in the end. He still needs to learn his drafting craft. We'll get into all that, of course. We have, and as Josh said, we're going to get into the IndyCar season preview. They're going to be running at St. Petersburg this weekend. Is it Colton Herta's time with the talk about Andretti Global and the likelihood that he's going to move to Formula One? He was fast in testing. He has won at St. Petersburg before. What does he have? What does he do? Can he finally get over the hump, get the consistency over these next couple of years to kind of prove that he's worthy theoretically? I mean, I don't know when you're getting into worthiness of Formula One drives when you look at people like Egghead and Lance Stroll and the like, but and Latifi. But We'll get into that. Alex Palou, Pato O'Ward, Dixon, Newgarden, et cetera, et cetera. Formula One testing started today on Wednesday, the 23rd. And so McLaren in the initial test day is on top of Lando Norris with their new machine. We'll get into all that. We'll also talk about the Xfinity race at Daytona, the 300, which saw Austin Hill take his first career victory in his first start for Richard Childress Racing. And Rally Sweden will be coming up this weekend. Talk a little bit about that, give a little preview on that. The Desert X Prix took place in Saudi last week, which saw the X44 team qualify well. But in the end, Rosberg's team wins again. We got MotoGP series testing there, some preview like launches and stuff. And the great Wayne Rainey, the three-time Grand Prix world champion whose career was ended in a crash at Misano and was paralyzed, will get to many now in 2022 get on his last world championship bike again and ride it at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, of course modified, which is huge to see. One of the great American motorcycle champions ever, back in the day when the Americans dominated Grand Prix motorcycle racing. So talk about that. We'll make our picks for Auto Club Speedway. They'll have Xfinity and Cup there. Josh will do a sim segment. We'll close the deal. So yeah, Cindric won, led, was solid all week, qualified well. He had a good speed in qualifying, then ran well in his duel, led 21 laps, gets himself locked in to the playoffs. As of now, he's the de facto rookie of the year too, because he won the biggest race of the year. And unless Harrison Burton can win a couple races, maybe that'll be the only way. But Cindric goes out there and wins in his first race in the 2-car, Josh. I went over the top 5. Kyle Busch came back from damage. He was involved in one of the big wrecks. McDowell defending his Daytona 500 win, first race with Blake Harris as his crew chief. He had one of the fastest cars the whole entire week, and he gets a top 10 finish. David Reagan driving for Rick Ware gets a top 10, showing that Stewart-Haas connection is really helping them, because that's 3 Stewart-Haas cars in theory in the top 10, 2 in the top 5. Brad Keselowski, who had one of the fastest cars all day. Definitely there's plenty of memes out with Brad with, snow plows and running over people. A friend of mine sent me a meme of his head superimposed on Taylor Swift's body for the Wrecking Ball album, and that kind of made me pukey. But
That's funny.
I'm like, that's gross, but it's hilarious. He hit everything but the lottery, and it was close. He was running 4th with a lap to go and then got swept back. He led the most laps, finished 9th, and Clyde finished 10th. Daniel Hemrick, who got sent tailback and had to go do a pass-through penalty, actually finished 12th there. I missed that part. There were 17 cars, or 15 cars on the lead lap, 2 cars that were 1 lap down. Cody Ware actually got a top 20 out of it. Some Spire cars actually finished. Not really relevant. Truex, once the Toyotas got separated, it had some issues there. Jacques Villeneuve got through and finished 22nd in his Daytona 500 debut. The Hensberg car did good after having some initial issues. So let's start with Cindric. A couple of years ago, we wouldn't have thought that the guy was really that good of a stock car driver, and he frankly wasn't. And then something clicked during pandemic where he was able to make something work with Brian Wilson. He figured out what he needed from these cars. And since that time, since the summer of 2020, he's become a legitimate force, somebody who has the ability and could do something. And of course, he was going to get every opportunity. His dad runs Penske Racing. But to go out in your 8th Cup start, for a second Daytona 500, and be able to hold up against, the big dogs that have never won this race, like Brad, like Kyle, and the other Kyle who disappeared basically at the start of the race, etc. People, Clyde, Martin Truex, and be able to hold up and be able to do it and handle that pressure. And then on the final restart, hold off all comers, including Bubba, Briscoe, Brad, etc., etc. that it shows that this kid, who knows what he's going to do the rest of the year. I figure on road courses he's going to be a definite factor, and now he gets the free roll. Now you're telling a guy who is an amazing road racer gets the free roll at Coda, at all these other road racing circuits, that this could be an interest. He could do something that hasn't been done since Denny Hamlin. You win multiple races, finishing top 5 in points. As a rookie, Tony won 3 races and finished 4th. Hamlin 3 races 3rd. Jimmy Johnson 2 races and 5th. And of course, 2 of them, of course, are 2 of the greatest drivers ever. In theory, Denny Hamlin's a Hall of Famer even without the championship. So that's the level now we're looking at with Austin Cindric, because he did what he did on Sunday there, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, he was able to go out and win Daytona 500 and had a lot of help from Ryan Blaney towards the end, and then of course made a well timed block on Blaney, made contact. Blaney did touch the wall, and then came back down to block Bubba Wallace. And I think if in that finish, Bubba, or not Bubba, but Cindric had not made contact with Ryan Blaney, I think we would have seen a 3-wide finish for the win there, possibly with Bubba coming out on the bottom, or at least having a closer chance, because you have the 2 cars side drafting and then you have the 23 come on the bottom. Then I think maybe you would have seen a 3-wide finish for the win for the Daytona 500. But certainly for Cindric himself, this is his debut in full time in the Cup Series, 8th start in the series. Had a handful of starts last year. Went from a year ago when he won the Xfinity race a year ago to start his 2021 year. Then the day after in the Daytona 500 was part of that fireball crash on the final lap. I think it was his car that ended up being on fire in that mess, but goes out and a year later now winning the Daytona 500. It's the culmination of his career, I guess you could say. Did win of course the Xfinity championship, and I do have to say, since basically if you look at relative history, we started this show right about the time they were coming back from COVID and everything, and you saw Cindric go out and do his hot streak. So maybe our show debuting basically spurned the emergence of Austin Cindric's oval track racing career and his success on ovals. So maybe we talk about manifesting things, and we try to do that on this show. Maybe we somehow manifested Austin Cindric's NASCAR career from actually being somebody who's really good on ovals in addition to being really good on road courses. And talk about the new car, it's going to be really good on road courses. And guy like him, a lot of road racing experience, went through the road to Indy, just like last year's winner, Michael McDowell. So he got all that in play. Could, like you said, could end up having multiple wins for this season, and then possibly he could end up being a championship contender if things go his way, especially with the way these elimination races play out in the Cup Series. Could end up falling into that top 4 in Phoenix, and he's done it in the Xfinity Series and was literally one corner away from doing it again back in November, and went from that to winning the Daytona 500 this year. So a lot of success coming in a short time for Austin Cindric, and I think he's got the right people behind him in Penske to be able to do it, and he's got a great support system, and I think we're probably going to see one of the better drivers here in the Cup Series as we go out in 2022.
Yeah, I think with Logano is the leader of the team because of being the veteran, all the wins he's had, champion, the experience, all that. He's the leader of the team. And Blaney, he's very popular. He really is him and Bubba are the 2 most popular drivers, legitimate most popular drivers in the sport, honestly. And he is so close. He's right there. And his super speedway prowess is really, really good. But the difference is, and that's probably why, he doesn't get the hate like his former teammate Brad Keselowski and his current teammate Joey Logano, is he doesn't have that killer instinct to put himself in the position generally, especially at Daytona. He's better at Talladega, kind of like all of them. I mean, Brad's really, really good at Talladega. He doesn't do as well at Daytona. Joey, it's 50-50, I think. It don't really matter. He can win either one place. They all can. But I think with Blaney, he sent Newman to outer space a couple of years ago. There was last year when he sent his buddy Clyde. he doesn't have that finishing aspect. And when you have a rookie who's, of course, his dad runs the team, but now he's showing this talent. He's 23 years old. All these sponsors like Discount Tire and whatever are there, and they're going to stick there. And you start to wonder, you have Harrison Burton there, who actually had, for 150 miles, had one of the best cars out there. And we're going to talk about Brad and some of the incidents he triggered. But he looked good last weekend. He kind of looked like the guy that a couple of years ago was, he could be one of the next big prospects in this sport. And that was a car that Cindric was initially going to be going to. And then Brad was like, I want to be able to own a team, which in turn opened up the opportunity for Cindric to go and take over the flagship car. You have to wonder about Blaney's viability at times. Who knows? Maybe he recovers, he does well the rest of the season, he goes wins a championship. Then we don't have to worry about it anymore. But it's races like this that you have to start thinking about Blaney's long-term viability. I mean, he'll always be popular. People are going to like him. He's a cool dude. He's chill, laid back. He actually has a personality. He's very soft-spoken like his dad and his whole entire family, frankly. But you need to be able to close in those spots. And Cindric already has. And Joey Logano is not going anywhere because Shell Pennzoil's never leaving, at least for a long time. M&M's is leaving Kyle Busch, and that's after 15 years, and multiple championships and 8 trillion wins. So, anything is possible. But, I think the pressure's on him. I think you would also think, to a lesser extent, Logano didn't have the greatest week at Daytona. He got involved in some of the argy-bargy there, a couple laps down. And him and Paul Wolf, when they were put together, I think, I remember talking about this on Talking in Circles with Clayton and Spencer, that I thought that combination was going to take off and do big things, because Paul Wolf had already proven with Brad that they were a great combination. They won Xfinity title, won a Cup title, and then in short time. And then in a couple of years ago, they just did this team swap. And of course, Blaney has a new crew chief too, but I thought that combination would go and take off, and they've had good seasons and they've won races, but it hasn't been as productive as I really thought it would be. So you have to wonder, especially when you have the young gun there who's got like Teflon protection. He's never going to get fired at Penske, winning the Daytona 500, what that means for them as the season goes along. We got to talk about the rest of the top 5 or some of these other key players. Bubba Wallace, he was a fast car all week, really. When the Toyotas were all together, all 6 of them, they looked like a force. Denny Hamlin had to come from 30th. Once he came up there, he was pushing Bubba. The 2 of them were really running the show. Kyle Busch was leading the race, and he had a fast race car. Those 3 cars, I think Truex to a lesser extent had a piece, but it wasn't like as good. Bell really wasn't a factor, and Kurt Busch really wasn't a factor. But there was 4 of them, and Bubba now has the best average finish last 3 super speedway races, 2 seconds and a first. He's basically a la like some of these other guys. They make their name at super speedways, but it's selling him short because he's good on short tracks too. He sucks on road courses, and he tells everybody that he sucks on road courses, but he's really good on short tracks, and he's good at super speedways. Intermediate program depends. I think this next few weeks will be an interesting thing to see about Bubba Wallace. But to start the year with a second place finish after the year they had most of the year last year, how rough it was, getting that win at Talladega, of course, to validate a lot of things. I'm sure, and he's bummed out about it. He didn't have a right front fender at the end of that race, and he was still able to put himself in the spot to win. So if he had a clean piece, who knows? And Chase Briscoe, personal bias aside, I'm leaning back and pointing to my sign over there that I got with the Mahindra Tractors 14 car. The sponsor, Mahindra, the guy who's named Mahindra, the Indian guy, he's congratulating him, talking about how great it is that he, in his first race with this sponsor, getting a third place finish. It shows the connections he makes with these people. For a guy that had to sleep on couches and had to volunteer at Cunningham Motorsports with no expectation, all these other teams, to be in a spot where now he's got his best career Cup Series finish in a car that looks very similar to the 2011 Tony Stewart car. Had a chance I mean, it's after last year. It was a rough rookie year. Really, only had about 3-4 shots to win last year. Everyone remembers Indianapolis, but there were other times. Nashville, brakes failed while he was running in the top 5. He wasn't going to win the race, but he had a chance. He had a fast race car. I think there maybe been 2 other shots he had to win, and to come out this first race after a rough rookie year, albeit he won Rookie of the Year, to go out and finish third, get his first best career Cup Series finish, I think is huge for that organization, Stewart Haas in general, considering how bad they were last year. And it kind of goes to, I don't know if you said it or Joe Passero said it, where our guest last week talking about how they may have hedged in regards to 2022 and they sold out on 2021 with the old car to try and be able to take off. That might have been the case because the Fords were fast all week. The Chevys were not as big of a factor as you would think at Daytona, other than qualifying. Toyotas were there, but then once they started losing numbers, it was a big problem. So I guess thoughts on Bubba and Briscoe, and then anybody else in the top 10. I mean, we'll get to Brad here in a minute. I think Kyle Busch, obviously, another year. He doesn't get it. Brad doesn't get it. Get a Daytona 500 win. I think those 4 are guys. And then Chase Elliott, of course, finishing the top 10. So 3 of the biggest names in the sport, all champions, don't have a Daytona 500 win. Another year, they're going to have to wait.
Yeah, I mean, first with Bubba, I think he had a strong piece as well in that field, and I think on that final lap he ended up having a good run from a good push from Eric Almirola, and then of course he had the push there to Blaney off of turn 4, and like I said earlier, like could have had a chance there. And I think the damage that he took from 47, the last caution before that restart, I think if he didn't take that damage there and the fender didn't pop off, that could have provided some wind resistance there with that off, and I think with it on maybe would have had a little bit more of a chance to get to Austin Cindric there. But he had a strong piece overall, I feel like, and definitely when it was 25 laps to go, I thought maybe he'd be able to stay out in front, and I think if he had been able to keep hooked up with Kyle Busch, I do think maybe they would have had a better chance at winning the race. Because I think once they got separated, it was harder for them to get back to the lead on that part. And it was once the Fords were able to kind of team up and stay up there, it's going to be really hard for a non-Ford car to go out and take the lead. I mean, we briefly saw that with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Before he got crashed, but that didn't really last all that long. I think actually Stenhouse did end up leading more laps than Bubba at the end of the race, but I mean, when it came down to it, Stenhouse was able to get up front, but he couldn't, like, he was by himself, basically, surrounded by Fords. And so it was always going to be inevitable that he would get passed. And so I think with, Bubba up there, if he had gotten around the Fords, maybe the same thing would have happened, unless he had Kyle Busch behind him, which I thought maybe might have happened on that final restart. But they just didn't have enough opportunity to get up, in front of each other, Bubba in front of the 18 or 18 in front of the 23 to really do something. And then Kyle Busch was able, he was still able to push Chase Briscoe on the final lap and help him up to a third place finish there. And then, with Bubba himself getting a push from Almirola to get up to second eventually. So it all kind of worked out. They just had fallen short of it. So we'll see, in future races at Talladega and, possibly Atlanta, we'll see if they're able to team up together and kind of stay together. Denny Hamlin, I mean, he went up from 30th all the way up towards the front, got caught up in the first big one and everything. So he ended up not being a huge factor in the race. Truex won both his stages, but that was it. Wasn't really in the lead any other time. Just happened to time it right. So maybe, for him, if he had not got caught up that crash with Tyler Reddick, in the middle with like 50 laps to go, possibly could have been there for the win, or another situation there. Of course, with Kurt Busch wasn't really a factor. Like you said, Christopher Bell, not really a factor. So 3 out of 6 Toyotas were at least somewhat of a factor in the race. So, I mean, there's that. I think they maybe have a little bit more work to do as far as having the whole team having a success, but 3 out of 6 isn't that bad, especially half their cars, half their entries, and everything. And then of course with the Chevys, they outside of Ricky Stenhouse, they didn't really do anything. Kyle Larson, I think, took the lead like right around the halfway point of the race, right after halfway, but didn't last there very long. Thought maybe it might be a move that we see at the end of the race where you're able to get a run on one car, get to the lead, and then get past really quickly. That's probably a move that you would have saved for the last lap of the race or something like that. William Byron led one lap early on. Chase didn't lead any laps, I don't think. So didn't end up having anything really to show for their efforts there. So still a lot of work to do, I think, on the super speedway part for Chevy. But I think overall, it turned out basically like the duels in terms of who was up front. I mean, it was basically a Ford show in the duels, and it kind of stayed that way. And I mean, even with Toyota kind of having a say, it was mostly just a Ford show for the most part. And we saw that play out as the finish came about on Sunday. So it was looking like maybe early on it's going to be a Ford thing. I mean, I think I brought it up. I think maybe Joe brought it up too, like you said earlier. The Fords hedging their bets on 2022. Looks like Fords are fast. Fords are up front. First on race day. That's what Ford stands for to some people. So there you have it. And so I would expect next week Penske car is probably going to be up front, along with at least the Roush, maybe one of the Roush cars, maybe a couple of the Stewart Haas cars there. So we'll see what happens there with Ford as they continue to go on throughout the season. I think other cars that maybe we didn't talk about. I mean, he brought up Jacques Villeneuve. So he ended up finishing 22nd, highest finisher of the first year starters in the Daytona 500
at 50.
Yeah, 50. Yeah,
brand
at
new
50.
team,
Yeah.
engine change, starting tailback. Yeah.
So I mean, still 2 laps or 3 laps down and everything, but still ended up having a solid finish, taking it home there. So at least a good job for them in their debut. Stayed out of trouble for the most part and able to take it home there. Then of course, the 21 car was another car that ended up having a good run early, but then they got taken out in wrecks and stuff, and then they were the car that flipped. And I guess we'll talk about it later, but I mean, that's one of the things maybe people didn't foresee with the next-gen car being able to turn over. And of course, we've seen it in IndyCar and sports cars over the years where the cars with the flat underbody end up like having an issue where they get turned around, air easily displaces it, and then it ends up catching air and flipping over. We kind of saw that with Harrison Burton's flip there. I mean, it wasn't a very violent flip or anything, but still got turned over and flipped over one time and got back on its wheels. So there's a little bit of concern there, although didn't end up having any issues as far as like safety in that regard, just a car tipping over. So that's gonna be one thing to look for going forward if we see that at other races, especially at the super speedways. But I think overall, I think you just have to give a tip of the hat to Ford. They seem to figure it out, at least for the super speedways once again. And we'll see if it carries over to the to the short tracks, to the intermediates, and to the road course.
Yeah, that's something we're going to find out here this weekend. 2 Mile rough old racetrack at Auto Club California Speedway. They've done some grinding on it, I think, in certain spots on the back straightaway. Because I think the whole entire track is basically turned into the Garden State Parkway or local roads here in Edison. And you could basically go down the back straightaway, and it reminds me of the old camera view that NBC had at Charlotte with all the bumps that they had with the old cars when they were way up. And they'd be going and bouncing all the way down the back straightaway before Humpy Wheeler did his levigating. I wanted to go, and I was thinking about levigating and them having to go and do it, and I just wanted to get it in there. So that's just one of the greatest things that's ever come around. Humpy Wheeler a guy named Humpy or whatever, that's not his actual government, but going and doing levigating and basically taking a track that was okay and ruining it, which is the SMI thing, which is sad because they're going to kill Dover here at the end of this year. But yeah, I mean, Brad, all the memes that came out, he sent Harrison Burton after 150 miles there, triggered that first big one that took out Denny Hamlin, Chastain, Harrison, William Byron, and that was one of 3 incidents he was connected with there. He was involved in the wreck that was the last wreck last caution of the race. With the 17 sending, I think I forget who he made contact. It was Ricky Stenhouse, I think, yeah. And then that was one of them. And I think there was a third incident. I'm trying to look at and remember if he was part of that. I think he was part of the lap. I know that was a Tyler Reddick wreck there in 152, as you mentioned earlier. But they said he was involved in 3 cautions, and they kept on making memes of that. He was very aggressive, and it's always been known he's very aggressive. Him and Joey Logano, and for good, bad, or whatever, people hate him. But here's the thing: with Brad Keselowski, it's his first race as a car owner. That's a team that doesn't have as much sponsorship as I'm pretty sure they would want. They're not the best team out there. He knows there's limited opportunities for them to win. Add the fact his famous father, legendary race car driver, just passed away a few weeks ago. He's never won the Daytona 500. His dad just passed away. He's probably got a one-track mind. I want to win this race for my dad. Whatever else happens, happens. He was willing to do whatever it takes. And in the end, that's what you have to do to win the Daytona 500. Good, and it's going to piss people off, but, what is it? Mike Skinner said he'd wreck his mom to win the Daytona 500. It's the fact. I'm not justifying it. At the end of the day, he didn't have to do what he did with Harrison Burton. That I get. Pushing the issue with Ricky Stenhouse. Ricky Stenhouse is an offender. He's as big of an offender as Brad or Joey are. They're probably the 3 most aggressive drivers on super speedways. So, and then I think Denny Hamlin's up there too. He used to be the guy that always triggered wrecks. Then he kind of calmed down or whatever, figured out something, he thanked Lambert, his spotter, and he said that was a big key to him becoming a good super speedway racer. But a lot of things were a lot of time was spent on Brad and his aggressiveness, but I look at it from a different perspective, I guess a fan perspective, and all the things going on for him in this spot. You also think about the clash when neither car was a factor. Neither car made the main event. His car might have been the worst car there. It's arguably was the worst car. Other than Bubba's car, the 6 car might have been the worst car in that racetrack at the LA Coliseum. He was fast. He made a great move on Thursday to win his duel. He had a relatively decent car and single car pace, but he made a pass on Kyle Larson 3 and 4, lap 1, and outside of getting passed by Martin Truex, he had one of the best cars in the field. The 6 car has not been a factor in this sport, to be completely fair, since Mark Martin drove it for the first of his 86 retirements. That's like 2005. That's the last time the 6 car has really been relevant in this sport. Brad going over there, and getting a lot of Kurt Busch's old one crew from Ganassi, trying to restart this whole deal, make this team relevant again. Yeah, he was aggressive. But if you're a fan, would you rather your driver be aggressive, or would you rather be the person that's going to sit in 30th, do the Dale Jarrett strategy, run 30th, come up with 20 to go and get wrecked anyway? I'd rather be the one that's aggressive and give myself a chance. What's going to happen is going to happen because it's super speedway racing. Unfortunately, it's sad because the reality is there was more respect, I think, Josh, in this Daytona 500 than there was in many past races on super speedways and at Daytona 500. I also look at the racing in general, and it was actually not that bad with this new car. Which, when you consider how bad the racing became with the Gen 6, is a positive. Do I think that it was probably because of the new car and all these teams being very cautious? That might have been. Maybe they're not as cautious once they get to Talladega or during the Coke Zero 400 at the end of the regular season, trying to make the playoff, or Dega in October. But I think the overall, like the Brad thing, whatever. You can have your feeling. A lot of people hate him, whatever. If I had 35 cup wins in a championship, and I own 1/3 of a race team with Jack Roush, who's a legend, and Fenway Group, who's connected to so many sports franchises, he can go and pee on all of them. It don't really matter. Then nobody's really he doesn't give a fuck. I don't know what he's going to do this weekend. It's a good track for him at ACS when he was in a Penske car. What he's going to do this year in general, but you know he's going to push to try to win because he wants to prove that this was the right move. He's in a lot of ways, he's in the same spot that Tony was in 2009 when he moved away from the proven commodity of Joe Gibbs Racing and something that he built with Greg Zipadelli there in the 20 car. And the 20 car has not been the same since, really. I mean, outside of Matt Kenseth's first year there, Kenseth's or whatever, or Kenshitz or whatever, like if you listen to Rusty Wallace pronounce it or whatever. Now Matt Kenseth's actually going to be in the booth this weekend, so that's going to be hilarious. Because I'm pretty sure he's going to be burning Clint Boyer the whole entire time, which would be hilarious. It would be awesome. Because Clint Boyer's so horrible. That's another thing. Before we get into that, you can get into the Brad and some of the other, the car itself, because there was issues with the car and the wheels. Some of the wheels are falling off. It's hilarious to me that Floyd Mayweather's car's wheel was falling off. That was during the same caution that Cindric went and sent Briscoe. The 31 car had a wheel fall off. In the end, they've announced that the Penske and RFK teams are not going to be penalized for the wheels that were confiscated. That was on J-Ski I just saw. So obviously they're basically copying to the fact that the wheels are not manufactured properly and they needed to be modified. So there is that. Tony did a good job in the booth, and the ball busting that he did with Boyer, I think that's going to be a common theme with people that actually have a clue. Miss Hummer being in the booth for 2 races is going to make me not want to watch those races, honestly. I mean, Phoenix sucks ass, period. Vegas, Kyle Larson's probably going to win one of these next 3 races at a minimum. I just feel it, but we'll see what happens with that. But talk about the next gen car, Josh and Brad, and anything else that really came up to you in regards to this race on Sunday.
Well, I mean, I have to agree with you. The racing wasn't that bad. There was, some interesting aspects of it, of how you could push draft to the lead when it came, time to block, how you had to execute blocks, and how well timed you could place those blocks. And I think for Brad, a lot of that aggressiveness is really just trying to find the limit of what you could do with this car, especially being a brand new car on the super speedways. And there's not really a whole lot of time that they had to test that out in race situations, with being able to push draft and push to the lead and all that stuff. I think Brad was probably being a little aggressive, yeah, like you said, but I mean, he was trying to figure out a way to win the race, because I think after last year, he wants to be able to be in the lead and have a chance at winning. We saw how disgusted he was at not winning the race last year, and I think that's gonna set in him for a long time. It still does, and I think
it still pisses me off.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, and I think as we go out into next year, as Daytona 500, you're probably going to see a lot of the same. Brad Keselowski really doing his damnedest to try and win this race, because there's no other prize like it, and this is the last thing basically for him to accomplish in this sport. And if he's able to do it in the 6 car, that be quite something to see. So I think that is just product of figuring out things, and then also a lot of aggressiveness there, and then. I think for the next gen car, I mean the wheel issue is an interesting aspect, because I mean it does show that some of the wheels may not be properly manufactured. Usually modifying the wheels like that would be a huge no-no, and they would have been handed swift penalties and things. But I think Penske clearly showed that it was a defect with the wheels, and Roush as well, RFK, that they showed there was a issue with the wheels, and they weren't trying to modify it to gain an advantage, but rather fix a problem so that they wouldn't be have a disadvantage from it. So I think that was more of the issue there. We saw wheels falling off during the race, like you said, from Kaz Grala, the 50 car. 31 had a wheel fall off as well. A lot of issues like that, and I think there's just an issue probably with getting the the single lug nut thing, getting that secured onto the car. Yeah, exactly, monolug, whatever. Getting it secured onto the wheel, and I mean, these pit crews are used to drilling in individual lug nuts, and now they just have one single thing. So still getting used to that, and of course now we're running into issues with that, and you'd like to see maybe more pit crew practice with this car. being able to master the art of drilling and undrilling a lug nut off a single lug nut off the car like that. And of course, with that, it actually leads to 4 tire stops, taking a lot shorter time than just what it used to, and now it takes longer to get fuel into the car.
Yep.
And we're probably going to see a lot of strategy change from the last couple of years, and maybe a lot more 4 tire stops, just for the fact that it's going to be a lot quicker, and there's really no time advantage now for 2 tire stops, unless you're taking less than a full fuel load. So we'll see what happens there with that. And I think the other issue we saw was like parts and pieces flying off the car. We saw a highlight of the hood flap from Kyle Busch's car got loose, and then it was just flapping through the air the last part of the race. And I mean, it was just slowly deteriorating over time, and you can see it by the end. It was basically nothing. It was just the tether strap and maybe like a very small piece of carbon fiber or whatever it is on there. And then I think, with mentioned earlier with Harrison Burton flipping over, of course, they had air catching under the car like that. The rear diffuser probably had a factor in that as well. And a flat underbody and easily lifted off the air like that also had cars pushing onto it. So you have car pushing onto the side and then, or on the front end, and then you have air on the back. It's going to lift the car up in the air like that and flip over. So imagine NASCAR is probably going to go to the drawing board and see if they can figure out things to rectify that for super speedways, maybe even some of the intermediate tracks as well, where you'd reach a high speed like that. Maybe even for California, we might see something. I don't know. And then, I think there was the fact that the hood flaps and the roof flaps didn't exactly deploy, so they're probably gonna have to take an issue or take a look at that issue and see what they can do to fix that. I think for the most part it was a solid debut. There wasn't like issues that we saw at the Busch Class, but certainly things that we didn't think about, like the car flipping over. I think maybe we had a feeling maybe something would happen to the wheels, and it did. And so I think teams will fix those issues and then move forward from that. I think that's really it for, the issues with the next gen car. Of course, you have the drafting and stuff. I think they're going to figure out over time if they can lock onto each other rather than just, simply bumping. If we can figure out a way to get back to tandem racing, that'd be great. I liked it like that better, and
Yep.
if they can figure that out, certainly be a plus in my mind. Right now it's just kind of the slam drafting that we saw in the early 2000s, mid 2000s with the old Gen 4 car, and I would be okay with that. But I kind of like the sustained drafting better, because then you can really have huge runs down the backstretch, down the corner, wherever. So there's a lot to take away from this car's debut, but certainly a lot to look forward to as we go along throughout the season.
Yeah, I had to get the monologue thing in because I was watching the Xfinity broadcast, which we'll talk about later, the Xfinity race, and Chad Knaus went monologue, and then Denny Hamlin had to go and chime in. It's like, you understand that this guy's like full on committed to it when he goes monologue. We haven't heard that, but then of course when you consider that Chad goes and works on the Jimmy Johnson sports car team on his side hustle is working on his buddy's sports car team, so monologue has probably been a thing for a while, but he had to go and bring that on the broadcast with his great vocabulary, along with being one of the greatest crew chiefs ever. Both Trent Owens, who's a crew chief for Jess and Alien at 31, and Tony Huri Jr., who somehow got sucked into crew chiefing that 50 car, and along with 2 crew members, have been suspended for 4 races. In the case of the 31, that's the next 4 races, so that's brutal for the West Coast swing in Atlanta, which of course Atlanta is a brand new racetrack, so that's going to be a pretty rough stretch there for Colleague. One Colleague car failed 3 times at Daytona, and then now you've lost your crew chief on your main car, so that's going to be a rough start for them. The 50 car, who gives a fuck? They're probably not going to be around the rest of the year, so it's whatever. Tony Uri Jr. has been suspended many times, whether it's of his own doing or not, so he's used to it. The cars, I think they drafted relatively well, as you said, Josh, and the pit problems, I think it was interesting how the fuel was an issue Blaney had issues with one of the tires, getting him on the left front tire, getting it on and off. So that's going to be something as we go along through the year. The strat, as you said, is going to be something we look at over time, and how that plays a role, depending on the track and the track surface. Because we don't know, we don't have a whole hell of a lot of data with these new 18-inch tires and wheels. We don't have a whole lot of data in regards to how these suspensions are going to hold up, especially on rougher racetracks. Because it's not like they run on all their tracks or billiard table smooth. It's not like running an IndyCar, but they run on some rough racetracks, big transitions. Curious to see what happens at Dover, considering how big the transitions are there. And some of the stupid shitty tracks that they go to with have weird transitions like Texas, how that all works out. But we will see. ACS is next. We'll get to that here near the end of our program. The next big part of the show tonight is the IndyCar Series. And the IndyCar Series will be back this weekend. Earliest start to the season, and I don't know. I'm used to the IndyCar season starting in April or late March, middle March, but they're starting just before the end of February, which is a freaking relief. I'm glad it'll be middle of the afternoon. Get to watch that race. Listen to it on the radio as I'm heading to go and get food with somebody that I'm being friend zoned by. And then another, considering that I'm friend zoned by a girl who is way too immature to deal with her own shit. And I'm going to get better than her, and I'm going to beat her on the fucking bowling lanes. But that's beside the point. Anyways, the fact of the matter is, in the terms of the IndyCar Series, Alex Palou is the defending champion of the series. He's one of the young guns. Colton Herta, who's been in the news for a while, he's up there. Pato O'Ward is up there. Those are three of the young guys in this sport. They had put a new ad out that obviously didn't really hit that well. We've talked about this in previous episodes. We did the recap of the season and did little preview pieces, whatever. But now you're thinking about those three guys. They all stood out. They all had great years, of course. You have Scott Dixon, GOAT, definition of a GOAT right there. Got beat by a teammate. It's the first time since 2012, I think, or something. Dario's the last teammate he's had that's actually beat him. So it tells you what Alex Palou did was pretty big. And Josef Newgarden, who, when we were talking about guys winning the Daytona 500, the only thing Josef Newgarden has to do to guarantee like lifetime membership and never just going to be able to drive at Penske until he's like 150 is win the Indy 500. I know he wants another championship because 3 championships is a great number. There's a lot of, even Bobby Rahal is a 4-time, won 4 championships. I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to go through all the guys. Like Mike Mario won, I think 4 or 5. AJ Foyt won 7. So that's where, Scott Dixon wants to get to 7. And I'm trying to remember guys who've won 3 championships. Of course, Dario won 3 or 4 actually. So that's the thing. We get into that. Those are the big 5, the guys that stood out last year in the championship. But this series is one of the most wide open series. It's a spec series in a lot of ways, but this field is so deep and there's so many young drivers. There's rookies. This rookie class is one of the deepest rookie classes ever, and you need to be on top of your bleep. You don't get that much time to be on to figure it out either. If you're off, you're screwed. And these qualifying sessions, forget the qualifying. The qualifying is probably just as exciting as a race, because to get out of Q1 on a road course, to get into the fast 12 is just as brutal as trying to get to get pole. So there's so many storylines, Josh. I talk about those 5 guys. I'm a Pato guy. Alex Palou's a good dude. He looks like he's 12. His dad looks like he's 24. It's weird. I guess it's that water on the island of Mallorca or wherever the hell they come from in Spain. Pato and Colton have been rivals for many years, and there are 2 guys that are possibly going to go to Formula One in the future. So maybe we're not going to see them forever. So it's probably lucky that we have them here right now. Newgarden, who's was in Europe and probably should have gotten a shot considering how good he is now Penske. He's Penske perfect. He's the new Rick Mears, except he hasn't won Indy. He's box office, but they don't give him the box office. Scott Dixon's a goat, and they don't give him the PR either because IndyCar doesn't know how to fucking promote them. We've talked about that many times on the show, but there's plenty of other stories we have to look at this year. But the thing I focused on circling this all back is Colton Herta because of with the Formula One talk and the fact that he's likely by 2024 going to be in a Formula One car. Is this his time? Does he have to? Is there a lot of pressure on him? Is he going to have to change his game, change his style? Because he's always been fast. And when Colton Herta puts it all together, it's pretty deadly. But then he's also liable to make a mistake and give away a race, a la the Nashville Grand Prix, which he had in his hand. It was over, gone. He put it in the wall. He's so fast. He's dominated races as a rookie. He did it at Coda 2 years ago. He did at Laguna Seca 2 years ago. He's done it at St. Petersburg last year. He can win races. We know that the guy's a winner. But can he put it together? Can he go and bring himself back like a couple of tenths? Can his dad, Brian Herta, bring him back a couple of tenths and make him the consistent driver that he has to be to beat the likes of Dixon, Newgarden, and O'Ward, Palou, whatever?
Well, I think for Colton Herta, I think he's got to be able to prove himself this year, and I would agree that he is under a lot of pressure, especially with the possible chance of going to Formula One, likelihood and very likely that he will go to Formula One. And so I think he has to prove himself that he can win on a consistent basis, that he can finish well on a consistent basis if he doesn't win, and not only not make mistakes, but also I think his team is a little bit under pressure as well because they have to be able to give him a fast piece, a reliable piece. We saw last year a few times where, especially at Gateway, where he had a car that could have won that race, led a lot of laps, but ended up having an issue in the engine or something, and then did not finish that race. And look at other races where didn't have the car or had something happen to him because of the car and didn't win the race. So I think he's got to come out right out of the gate here and dominate St. Petersburg. Did it last year, so no reason to believe he can't do it again. And I think you'll see him have probably a lot on his plate, a lot to prove. Yes, he's got to dial it back a little bit. He's sometimes too aggressive. Got to learn to be able to take what you can get, not take too much, not get too greedy, like we saw in Nashville last year, where he had a chance to win and then basically threw it all away in one corner and wrecked the car. So if he's able to kind of dial it back and solidify his position in the standings and be a contender for the championship, it'll put a lot on his resume to be able to compete in Formula One and certainly add to all of that and get that super license that he needs, which I think he already qualifies for. He just doesn't have it yet, so no reason why he can't go out and do it. He just has to be able to put it all together there. And then I think I also look at Pato O'Ward. Last year breakout season for him, and had a couple of wins in the series last year, and kind of the breakout for McLaren IndyCar. Do they finish on a consistent basis as well? Are they able to go out and lead laps on a week-to-week basis? Can they finish close to the podium and really have a chance to compete for the title, not just end up being on the finish with a second or third place on the podium, but also actually go out and challenge for the championship, where you're talking about Pato O'Ward actually having a chance to win the title within legitimate likelihood of winning the championship, not just like someone like, oh, if things go right, or if they can win X amount of races, they could end up being the championship. Because I mean, they were kind of there last year, but they didn't have quite as many consistent finishes as Newgarden or even Palou. So I think that's something that I'd like to look out for with McLaren as a whole for their team, along with Pato O'Ward. I think some of the other guys in this. I mean, you've already talked about Alex Palou. I mean, I think one thing you have to look out for is, does he kind of regress to the mean, right? Does he kind of go back to being number two at Ganassi behind Scott Dixon? Does Scott Dixon take his place back as being number one? A lot of things to play out here this season. I think you're going to see very competitive between them two racers. I would think that it's going to be kind of, I want to say like, Lewis versus Nico Rosberg kind of thing, but maybe sort of that sense. I mean, it's probably more fit to say Lewis versus George Russell. So we know what George Russell can do in that car as well. We saw it back in 2020 at Abu Dhabi, and we saw it in last year at Williams and everything. And Lewis, of course, is probably the equivalent in to Scott Dixon in IndyCar as far as being the GOAT, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, of course, it's not all equivalent, but as far as ability on track and things, I think it's kind of the equivalent there. And then you talk about all those guys, and then also I look at some of the rookies from last year. Look at Romain Grosjean and what he was able to do, how he was able to impress at a lot of these tracks on the circuit. I mean, look what he did at the Indy Road Course. Look what he did at Laguna Seca ovals. Look what he did at Gateway last year and Road America as well. And now he's in a full-time deal. Is he able to, pressure Alexander Rossi and maybe even challenge Colton Herta at some of these races and give them, certainly improve their game and improve his game in that car. So I look for Romain Grosjean to be able to improve on what he did in the 51 car last year, now having a full-time effort. Scott McLaughlin, look for him as well to try to challenge this year. Maybe we see a first-time winner in him this coming year. I think he's got a lot of talent. Did really well, I felt like, on the ovals, and so I think as well as on the road courses. So would like to see what he's able to do on these racetracks. And then, of course, you have Jimmy Johnson after really rough introduction to the Indy cars last year, but you saw him being able to, race pretty well once he got comfortable in the car. Once everything was there for him, and in race situations, there was times where he put up competitive lap times, even though he was maybe a couple of laps down. So now that he's got a full year of IndyCar behind him, what can we see him do in the 48 car? Can he challenge for top 10s in this series? Maybe occasionally, if things go right, if strategy goes right. And yeah, he does also have Mr. Hi to My Family at Home, Scott Pruitt, so as his driving coach. So for Jimmy, can he finish top 10? Maybe challenge for a podium or a top 5 at certain tracks. I certainly look for him to be a competitor, someone who can be competitive at the oval races. I mean, we know what he can do at Indianapolis. We've seen him do it in a stock car. So I would actually look for him to be a contender there, possibly, if he's able to, get a handle of the Indy car there. Gateway as well, and at Texas, which is very good at in stock car racing as well. So for the rookies from last year, definitely look for them to be able to make an improvement. And then, I think, of course, the new rookie battle this year, you have Devlin DeFrancesco, Kyle Kirkwood. You've got Tatiana Calderon, who's, I don't know how well she can do, but obviously another rookie there. You've got David Malukas, Christian Lundgaard, who I thought was very impressive in his run last year with RLLR Honda at the Indy Road Course last year for the second time. And then you've got Callum Illiot with Juncos Racing.
Callum Ilott.
Yeah, Ilott. Yeah, pronouncing his name incorrectly there. My apologies. But
no problem.
Yeah, no, it's
You're good.
Yeah.
I figure that I have to bring something to the table, so I just pronounce all the names like Bob Varsha.
Yeah.
And then you go and pick up for me when I'm falling asleep and like making no sense. So it all works.
Yeah, so it's fine and everything. And then so it's going to be a competitive rookie class, and I want to see what I think Lundgaard and I think Kyle Kirkwood are guys I think can be really competitive. I want to see what Kirkwood was able to do in this AJ Foyt car. It's a car that was somewhat maybe competitive on road courses with Sebastian Bourdais, but not always there. So interested to see what he can do with as a rookie in that car. And then I think Lundgaard, he's got teammates to lean on. He's got Graham Rahal, And then of course he's got
Jack Harvey.
Jack Harvey as well in that 45 car. So he's got two veterans in this series he can lean on for help and experience. Also, we have Devlin DeFrancesco in the 29 car for Andretti. I think he could be competitive as well. And then I think, especially being around two veterans in Colton Herta and Alexander Rossi, and then Romain Grosjean, after 1 year in IndyCar, I think has a lot of experience to lean on as well, and certainly can help improve the performance of the Andretti team as a whole if he can do something, if he can finish well consistently. So this rookie class is going to be very competitive as well, like you said, and it's going to be interesting to see where they can finish on a week to week basis, and then ultimately who ends up being the rookie of the year in the IndyCar series this year.
It's funny. I went and I was talking to Joey Barnes, former guest on the show, and I mean, I was saying that I wasn't looking for guests, but I was asking him if you had availability, but I didn't. He initially said he would, but I wasn't gonna go down that road. And he's like, who's gonna be the champion? Who's gonna be the rookie of the year? And who's gonna win the Indy 500? I can't remember. I put Pato as a champion, which is my own personal bias. I picked David Malukas as a rookie of the year and Josef Newgarden as the Indy 500 winner, because that's literally that's the only thing he's missing. Malukas has always been fast. Yes, he has daddy's money and whatever. That's part of the reason why he's in the other car at Dale Coyne. But you put him with Takuma Sato, who's been in this series for like 100 years, who's bringing that extra money along with the Rick Ware money in that 51 car. You have a veteran presence there, a calming presence, two-time Indianapolis 500 winner, going to a team that has shown over the last few years that they're very fast and can be fast in a lot of places. And you put a rookie who needs a little bit of molding, needs a little bit of veteran experience. He's dangerous. You talked about Kyle Kirkwood. I have a lot of high hopes for him. There was a point where he wasn't going to have a ride, which is insane, which tells you how bad it is for actual people who can drive. It kind of goes with the whole Pato O'Ward deal. Like I was thinking about this, you talked about Tatiana Calderon, who's going to be one of his teammates at AJ Foyt Racing, and she's had Rocket as one of her sponsors, and she's driven all over the world. She's driven in WEC, she's driven in Formula 2. She's driven Super Formula in Japan, Formula Nippon, as it used to be called, but now it's Super Formula. And she's generally been, meh. But she keeps on getting, because she has a money Colombian sponsorship. She also has Rocket sponsorship. She has all kinds of sponsorship, even though she's like Miss Hummer. She's like the Colombian Miss Hummer, and she kind of looks like a dude too, which is not great. But then so does Miss Hummer, unless you doll her up and put her in heels and a dress. But the fact of the matter is, Calderon has never really done much of anything, but she keeps on getting opportunities. Kyle Kirkwood was about to not have a ride if Logan Sargent didn't get a call from Williams to go and become one of their junior driver academy people, and he was going to be in the 14 car, and then he got that call. And not only is he going to be, basically the de facto test driver for Williams, he's going to be in Formula 2, which he should have been in Formula 2 last year anyway. But because of the stupidity of the system, he ended up having to not only stay in Formula 3, go to a worse team than Prema, and he went and raised Charus to a team that was actually worthwhile when he drove for them. So, and his teammates couldn't compete with him. So Kirkwood has won in all three levels of Mazda Road Indy. He's one of the best young talents the sport has seen in a while, like a Colton Herta, like a Pato O'Ward, whatever, but he's won all three levels of the Road to Indy. If he can take AJ Foyt's 14 car to the front, a car that hasn't really been a factor on a weekly basis in 2 decades, going back to the IRL days, it would be huge. American kid, clean cut, Florida, all that, kind of like Ryan Hunter-Ray. It would be huge for the sport. be huge for AJ Foyt, because he hasn't really seen his car been all that good in a while. And it would be something for him to get that young gun, an American driver, no less, to get his flagship car back to where, AJ Foyt wants it to be. And Larry Foyt, I mean, I know the pressure is on Larry to go and get somebody, and I think he finally has someone that he can build around. And it's fortunate that Andretti doesn't have enough cars, really. And the money, even though he's connected to all these different entities, he should have had him in his car. Same way as Pato O'Ward should be driving for him too. Could you imagine having Colton Herta, Pato O'Ward, Kyle Kirkwood, and whoever, Alexander Rossi, and you probably would have a murderer's row. He had that because he had all those guys in Indy Lights, except for Alexander Rossi. But yeah, you get the point. So we'll see what happens. Rookie battle is going to be great. I'm very intrigued with that. Jimmy, I've become a de facto Jimmy fan all of a sudden, now that he's an IndyCar driver, because he's just become, I think this is the real Jimmy. He's loose. I think he's going to make that next step because he's been this good. You're talking about 30 years of a career now, because he was doing this shit and in Mickey Thompson Stadium off-road running buggies at like 15 years old before Chevy got him. He's been doing this for 30-something years. He doesn't want to run 20th. He's got Ganassi equipment. We forget about, and I'm forgetting his name now, the Husky Chocolate freaking driver. Oh, God. Of course I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. But, not Rosenquist. It's Marcus Ericsson. There you go. Marcus Ericsson had a great year last year, won a couple races. Marcus Ericsson's there. You have a really good team. Johnson made so much progress from when he started the season at Baba to when they ended at Long Beach in September. I mean, Jimmy, the results may not show it, but I mean, the guy is one of the greatest race car drivers ever. I wouldn't have been able to say that a few years ago per se, but to go out and do what he's doing at such an advanced age, in a field and with people and drivers, and like it's insane, really, to be fair. He had, he had 12 races last year out of 16. Trying to go and bring these up here. I mean, the fact of the matter is he didn't finish better than 17th in any race he was in, which doesn't sound great, but to think about having to get into this series, it's one of the most competitive series in motorsports, no matter what you want to think about it. And to be 40-something years old, jumping in an Indy car, physically he's perfectly capable, but to have to go and drive these cars and be competitive, he struggled early. First couple of races weren't too great. It took him until that second race at Belle Isle, where he kind of it changed whatever, and then he had an early crash at Nashville, and then things turned a little bit at the second Indy GP. We'll see what happens. I kind of think Texas and Indy are the two that I'm curious about. He's won a shit ton of races at Texas. He's won 4 Brickyard 400s, which is second most only to Jeffy. I'm curious of what he's going to do. He's always wanted to run the Indy 500. He might go and put it on the front row. It'd be something. But we'll see what happens with that. I mean, I'm looking forward to this season. I love the IndyCar series. I'm a mark. I'll always be a mark for Indy cars. And we'll see what happens with that. I mean, I have to go and I'm just going to go bring up the IndyCar field here for the IndyCar. You got to give them credit. They have one of the crappiest websites on planet Earth. It's amazing to me how they think this website's good.
It's part of their marketing.
Yeah, it makes sense. It is like their marketing, because Christ almighty, like I just want an entry list. Like, why can't I get an entry list? That's all I want. I don't even care about What the hell's okay? So pit assignments. All right, here we go. That's what I'm going to use. I have to use pit assignments to go and figure out who the hell's in this race. All right, so they're doing it based on last year's points. So Palou, Newgarden, opening, Pato O'Ward, Scott Dixon, Colton Herta, Rosenquist. Not, I keep on saying Rosenquist. What the hell? Marcus Ericsson, Green Rehal, Scott McLaughlin, Winge Power, Alexander Rossi, Renus VK, Lundgaard, the Meyer Shank 60, which will be Simon Pagino. Then they'll have an opening. Then they'll have Takuma Sato, the 20 car, which will be Connor Daly, Kyle Kirkwood, what's his name? Roman Grosjean in the 28 DHL car, the 18 car, which will be David Malukas, Di Francesco, Felix Rosenquist, Jimmy Johnson, Jack Harvey, Callum Ilott, Elio Castro Neves. Then the last two cars are Kellett and Tatiana Calderon. So 26 cars, or no, 20. I think that's one. Yeah, 26 cars. Yeah. All right. That's a pretty good field there. There might be more as the season goes on, so we'll see about that. But deep field, 13 cars in each Q1 session, so that'll be a cluster. Considering the shit they do in Formula One, which we're about to get to, at some of these racetracks, I think it's going to be pretty hard to get out of Q1 at St. Petersburg here this weekend. But even though that is the case or whatever, we're going to make some picks. We're going to make some predictions here for the I left at the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, the opener of the 2022 IndyCar Series season this weekend. Previous winners, Colton Herta, Newgarden's won twice. Bourdais, who's retired from the series, won it 2 years in a row. He lives in St. Pete these days. Juan Pablo Montoya won it 2 years in a row. He's going to be running with his son at Sebring. You have Winge Power, Hinch, Elio Castro Neves, Dario, Winge, Briscoe, Green Rehal won his first IndyCar race there. What is it, 14 years ago for Newman Haas. Elio Castro Neves, multiple time winner there. We'll see if he gets his road racing prowess back here now that he's a full-time driver. But I'll go and throw to you, Josh. Who are you looking for this weekend at St. Petersburg? I mean, we don't have no practice. We have some testing. I mean, we've had Julia Steinbrenner. No, that's great. That's awesome. So we're getting a little bit of diversity there. But we've had some testing. Colton Herta has been up there, Andretti, the whole bit. But who do you look for to go and do something here this weekend at St. Petersburg?
Well, I think I look for Colton Herta to go out and defend his title from this race last year and win. He had a really strong car in this race last year, led like 97 laps. I was there, I saw it, so had a really, really fast car. And I mean, at the beginning, after that race, thought that that'd be Colton Herta would be on top of the season, but and it not quite being the case there. But I still believe he can pull it off here at St. Petersburg. He's really good at street racing. I also look for Josef Newgarden, who ran pretty well also last year and has won here in the past as well. So I would look at Newgarden as maybe a close second in this race, and maybe as a wild card. I would go with. I'm going to go with Romain Grosjean as a wild card. Let's see. Now he's here full time. Let's see what he can do with his 29 or 28 car with Andretti teammate being Colton Herta. So look for those three guys to hang around. Certainly Colton Herta be up front. Josef Newgarden to be up front as well. Possibly contend for the win against Colton, and then look for Romain Grosjean to be someone who can continue to bring that wow factor that we saw from him last year
Yeah, now he's in a full time ride. He brings Olivier Busson as his strategist. So there's something with that. The continuity to a team that has a lot of great people there. Look at leads. So I mean, we're going back. Pagano driving for Meyer Shank was able to, I didn't put anything up there in regards to calendar. Figured there would be a list testing report with David Malsher, but there's no list there. He was at Pagano 5211. Elio Castroneves, Couple Anderson, Marcus Erickson, Renus VK, and AJ Foyt driver Kyle Kirkwood. Head of the 14 car topped the morning times out of his Ganassi teammates Dixon Palou. Palou was sixth out of Carpenter car of Connor Daly. Calman was last year ninth. David Lucas 10th. So, and Jimmy Johnson was enough to give him 12th and 2 Foyt cars. So, I'm going to end up not being able to reach a limit of free articles. God, motorsport.com. Freaking motorsport.com. To go and pay for premium because IndyCar.com is the shittiest website on earth. I'm going to go. I have to go and bring up the IndyCar 2022 IndyCar.
I found the entry list on IndyCar, or not IndyCar, but on Motorsport. I just posted it.
All right. I don't
chat.
have any more free articles. So I'm not even be able to bring it up.
I
So
didn't know that was an issue.
it is an issue. Well, let's see if it comes up. All right, it does. All right, that's how you got around it. You picked Colton. That's where I was thinking about going, and then you brought up Newgarden, who's very successful there, and then Romain Grosjean. I'm gonna go with. I might as well go differently here. I'm gonna go with. I'm not. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Dixon's never won here. It would be pretty crazy if he does finally win at St. Petersburg. Like, considering all the places he's only won one Indy 500, which, considering how good Scott Dixon is, only winning one Indy 500. But here's the thing: at least he has one. Him and Dario got jumped out of Taco Bell, but he still has an Indy 500. I'm gonna go with, get the drum roll, please. I'm gonna go with a first-time winner. I'm gonna go with Scott McLaughlin. Scott McLaughlin goes and starts his 2022 IndyCar campaign, his second full season here in America, with his first career victory. There might be a little bit of fandom bias. I did it last week and it almost happened. But I just figure, Penske's always been good there. That car, that team has been very good there with Elio Castro-Neves. I go into the other driver, like the other main driver I would look at is Simon Pagano, driving the AutoNation Sirius XM number 60. He's energized, motivated, won the Rolex 24. He's looking to go and continue his career. I know that with the Honda program, it looks like he'll have longevity to go and continue. Not only in IndyCar, but also go and run sports cars and possibly go and get Le Mans along with all these other things. Might have a chance to win another Indy 500. They're talking about him as a championship contender. Again, he's always been relatively consistent. Might be off here and there, but winning an IndyCar championship a couple years ago, giving John Menard that Indy 500 he always wanted. He's a factor, I honestly think. So got a Chevy there, I got a Honda, and then the wild card to me is Kyle Kirkwood. He could be deadly. If they get it right, he could be really, really good. I'm not sure if it'll happen this weekend. Like Josh said, Bourdais with Foyt was good here and there, but it wasn't everywhere. And there were weeks where he was holding on for dear life, and that's probably why he's not going to drive an IndyCar anymore. It's the same way some other guys, after they drove for AJ Foyt, it's like, yeah, I'll just stop driving IndyCar if that's what I have to do. But they have to change the narrative at some point, and they have the guy to do it. In a lot of ways, Kyle Kirkwood joining this team has a lot of the same energies as Robbie Gordon going there. in 1993 after AJ Foyt finally committed to retiring full time in Ford, but that was more driven by Ford and Michael Cranafist because Robbie Gordon was their guy. But he went to Derek Walker after that 1 year and did well for 2 years there, and then Robbie Gordon started to come out, which is why, didn't go much past that. But I think Kyle Kirkwood could be a factor. I would think, relatively speaking, he'll do better on the road courses than on the ovals. I'm concerned about their viability, especially at track like the Indy 500, but I think he'll make the show. But we'll see what happens with that. Let's get into Formula One, Josh. We had what's it called? We had testing start here at what do you call Catalunya?
Catalunya, yep.
And Norris gets the first top time there. Ferrari had good pace. So and all these cars definitely look different. There are some differences, there are some similar, but there are definitely ways to identify them. Not just paint scheme, but these new cars are definitely a departure from what we've had over recent years in Formula One. I mean, we could go and get into what do we take away from the testing? I mean, you have Lando Norris already trying to play down things based on reporting from Chris Medlin from Racer.com. Fucking Fernando Alonso, piece of shit. Yeah, I mean, we had the results here today. Ferrari looked good in general, but of course McLaren gets the fastest time, and there was a lot of sandbagging, I think, going on, especially in the Red Bull camp in regards to their car, trying not to really show their hand. I think Mercedes might have been 50-50 with a 4th and 5th place result on fast times. You also have different tire compounds, the higher number compounds in the whatever their rotation for Pirelli are softer than the lower numbers. So there's drivers that their fastest time is on the C2 compound, which is a much harder compound, than drivers who run a C4 or C5. So that you got to take that into account. There's only going to be 2 preseason tests, so there is that. So I mean, I guess you had Lando Norris, and then Charles Leclerc was fastest in morning session. Carlos Sainz ended up finishing second, and Leclerc was third. So Ferraris were second and third, and they were running on softer tires. Coming out low, the McLaren was running, while the majority of the teams were on slightly higher ride heights. McLaren was lower. George Russell, and then he was 1,500ths clear of Lewis. Vettel, who only drove the morning before anyone, was Stroll, and then Yuki Tsunoda, Alonso, and Verstappen. During Verstappen was the center of attention and hadn't been seen prior to start testing, with a radically undercut side pod design and bodywork protruding in front of the radiator inlets. Hamilton was on yeah. Yeah, the Red Bull is definitely more, with the way they went about their regulations, is a bit more extreme relative to some of the other cars. So that's something to see. I mean, we could get into the whole thing. Do we take anything from these testing results? I mean, let's be honest. We can't really take shit from this. You could go and run fast in testing and be garbage at Bahrain here in a few weeks' time. I think the one thing you can take is reliability. If you have reliability in testing and you're able to get the time, the laps, and the data, you're at least going to be in a good position as you start these first few races. If you can't run, that's a bad sign. That was the case for Alfa Romeo with 2 new drivers. It's a case for Haas after last year, where they were a complete non-factor. They were having issues with their floor. So I guess we go and take it as a worldwide view. Josh, what do we take away from Formula One testing here so far? I mean, albeit it's 1 day. By the time we get to next week's show, we'll be getting ready for the second week of testing. So, what do you take away from day one? I guess McLaren and Ferrari are trying to put their name in the hat to go and compete against the Mercedes and Red Bulls of the world, to get back where they've been for many years after, being down, get back to where they've been for many years.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point there. I mean, there are some things we can take away. Like you said, there's things we can say about McLaren and Ferrari continuing to close the gap to Mercedes and Red Bull. But then again, like it's just day one of testing, and this might just all be an anomaly. So it may end up being meaningless in the end. And once we get to Bahrain, it'll just be Red Bull versus Mercedes once again. But we'll see what happens. There's looks like people or teams are still shaking things down, like we see with Red Bull. They have a radical design compared to the rest of the field, and maybe they're not showing their hand quite just yet. They're just trying to just get settled in right now and just establish somewhat of a baseline for their car as far as lap times go, and just break it in, I guess. And then you have teams like McLaren. They went out and put their car at the top of the charts. Lando Norris was driving today, and I mean, I think he's probably right to try to downplay it. At least, don't say, "Oh, we're out here. We're ready to run the table here and win these races." Because then, if you go out and be bold and brash like that, then when the season comes and you're not like that, it puts a lot of pressure. It's better just to downplay it from that aspect. I am curious about Ferrari because they were pretty quick as well. They ran a lot of laps. They ran 153 laps in this session. It was interesting with both those cars out there, and they both put up second and third fastest times. So they have a lot of to say for both their cars being really quick. There, I would like to see if there's a if we can find a way to get like kind of like an average lap speed over laps run per per session, or per time that they were out there in the car. See how does that compare between the teams. See who's actually fastest over a long period of time rather than just one quick lap. That would be something I'm like to see if we can find that on F1.com or something. I'm sure they'll release that as we get closer to the beginning of the season and as we continue to go throughout this testing. So that's one thing I'd be interested in finding out more information about. I think with Mercedes, they're probably right there as well. Right in the same range as Ferrari, just a little slower than Ferrari, but I mean it's all kind of relative, I think. I mean, Alpine was not as quick as what maybe other people thought. I mean, they're kind of still in the back half of the field if you go by by the points, top 10. So they're in the bottom half of that. Red Bull slow, but like I said, maybe they're not trying to reveal everything. And of course, you had issues with some teams. You had Haas having issues with their floor getting damaged for Schumacher. So still some issues there as far as kind of the same thing like in NASCAR, still breaking things in for their new generation car. But it's going to be interesting as we continue to go throughout this testing and see who's able to keep their way up through the rankings. Does McLaren stay at the top of the charts, or do they fall back towards the middle? That would probably give an indication of where they're actually at. Does Mercedes, can they consistently stay within the top 5 of the charts throughout the testing period? Do we see Ferrari do the same thing? And do we see Red Bull improve their standings as far as lap times go? So I mean, there's not really, a whole lot you can really take away from this other than just some clues and maybe hints as to what could happen here. And although I think it is probably also good for the paint, for the liveries. For each of the teams, you actually see what they look like in race action, see what they look like in driving conditions, and I think all of the cars looked pretty great, especially the Ferrari and the McLaren. Both their cars looked pretty exceptional in race condition there, so it was good. If you're looking for that aspect, of course, it was good debut for the paint jobs as well. So we'll see what happens here, but I mean, interesting first day overall for F1 testing.
Yeah, I mean It is early, and I think the one, I mean, it is, you talked about all the teams. You got some of them probably are on the back foot, but we don't really know what they're going to have by the end of testing, let alone what they're going to have at Bahrain when they start the season, or Australia, or whatever the fuck. I think it's Australia, but I have to go, and I'm going to close that. Formula1.com. Yeah, 5 things. Okay, there you go. Except all new cars show early reliability. This is Lawrence Barretto, Formula1.com. Also, yeah, that's what I said. Hamilton's feeling good. Red Bull breaks cover. And they have an interesting car, and then steep learning curve. Yeah, with the way these cars are. Inspector Lewis. I'm like, whoa. I didn't know who the hell that was. Oh, it's Lewis Hamilton just walking around and looking like a old lady. That's an outfit. Christ. I mean, we're the same age, and he's a hero of mine because he's one of the greatest drivers of all time, but motherfucker, he doesn't know how to dress. Yeah, people probably go much quicker than me. Yeah, of course he's gonna downplay it because they're looking good. But I mean, Lando Norris getting his car up there, Kiri running over 100 laps. Talking Yuki Tsunoda, Alonso Verstappen, they were the guys that had the car the whole day. Ferrari had 153 laps between Leclerc and Sainz. You had 127 laps between Russell and Hamilton. Lance, what is it, 67 and 50? Yeah, so 100, was it 119 total, it looks like, for the Aston Martin program. So getting over 100 laps of data there is good. Albon, Latifi, 122. So those teams are all, pace may not be the greatest, but it looks like right now, I mean, even if you want to get into it, Alfa Romeo, Williams, Haas are all going to be in the back, which is similar to what they were last year, just based on one session, but it's kind of hard to really get into that. Ferrari, McLaren kind of have a little more pace, but Mercedes is up there, and I don't think we've seen the best of what they have. And of course, Red Bull's sandbagging for sure in this spot. But I guess we'll have to wait till next week to get a little bit more data on that. The livery unveil for Alpine, they have two coming for this year. They'll have one that looks like the Racing Point or Force India from a few years ago. Yeah, that they'll run the first two races. The BWT livery, BWT comes along as a primary sponsor, and they'll run a majority pink car, Pepto-Bismol style, which when you consider how butthurt Fernando Alonso is, he definitely needs Pepto-Bismol to handle all the shitting he has to do because he's so butthurt. There's that, and then there's the blue and pink combination, which I think looks better personally amongst the two the cars that they're going to have here this year. But I don't know. What did you think of that car? The car unveil for Alpine. The only car that hasn't been unveiled is the Alfa Romeo in full livery, but we'll see that one soon, Josh. But the Alpine fresh livery BWT Otmar Safnow is going to be the team principal there. So that'll be something after many years that the team that is now Aston Martin. The blue with the little bit of pink livery is pretty clean, though. Yeah. So we will see what happens with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting fit because I feel like Alpine last year, they were very clear in branding their car with the Alpine colors, right? And very emphasis on the French nationality. It's a the French team basically. That's a marquee brand for that country, and it does add an interesting aspect now with the pink and blue of BWT. So it's an interesting, I guess, look type of livery. And I think the pink kind of it has a weird contrast, I guess, with the Alpine part of the livery. So we'll see how many races they have this livery. Of course, you said it was the first 2 races going to be with that, but it's going to be one of the more interesting looking cars, I think, on the grid this year.
And we still have to see Alfa Romeo, but I figure it'll be similar to what they have the last 2 years. More chrome illusion kind of red, scarlet colors with white. But who knows? Maybe they go and take a little bit, get a little more adventurous. Sauber's never really exactly been known for adventurous paint schemes. Ferrari went and took a departure with their scheme, and their car looks very unique and cool. Mercedes went back to the silver, which I was hoping for, so that's good. And we mentioned, Haas and Alfa Romeo are in trouble early, which isn't good, but I think we kind of knew that was going to be an issue. Before we move to the roundup, there, Josh, there's the pundits, a lot of the team principals are talking about Andretti, the Andretti global effort that's coming into Formula One more than likely. Split over Andretti interest. You have positive reviews from Karen Horner, but then on the flip side, you have Toto Wolff and Franz Tost, who at the end of the day, when you consider he's the only reason he has a job is because of Dietrich Mateschitz. That team exists because of Dietrich Mateschitz. It has nothing to do with Franz Tost. Andreas Seidel, who, to be fair, he's more akin to probably want to he's up for being up there and being positive about it, considering his current position as McLaren team boss. And they said Rossi. I'm like, if I welcome as a
Yeah, I thought they were talking about Alexander Rossi, but I don't know.
Laurent Rossi. Oh, it's the new Alpine CEO. There you go.
Yeah.
So the Alpine. So you have Alpine, the new Alpine CEO, or the Alpine CEO, because whatever, I forget their team boss is Michael. He has a weird name that I don't want to say because it'll get us really fucked up. Their team boss has a weird name. So Rossi, and then Andreas Seidel, who of course has a connection with Zach Brown, who has a connection with Michael Andretti. So all that, I'm pretty sure it's all positive there. Toto Wolff kind of no selling it when you consider his wife couldn't drive a hot nail through snow, and he funded her career all the way up to being the test driver for Williams is interesting. When you have a multi-billion-dollar car manufacturer behind you, and when the team wasn't that competitive prior to the regulation change in 2014, I think that's a hard no sell there, but whatever. I think it's hard to go and no sell a program when you don't really have all the details of said program, other than Mario Andretti kind of coming out and sending it out there and talking about what they're about. I think Michael Andretti wouldn't be committing what amounts to $1 billion, like Toto Wolff said, not just out of his own pocket. Of course, I don't think he has $1 billion, but he has people together that he can commit $1 billion to get into Formula One. He probably has a commitment from some manufacturer to build an engine, or he's either connected with, whether it's Mercedes, Ferrari, or Honda. Probably, Honda might be in play actually, and he could go and get them to be like, I've been one of your main Honda teams for all these years. He always had a thing with Honda because that's where he started with McLaren many years ago when he started testing for them in '91. Before his eventual debut and not being able to drive for Honda. I think Honda was a big connection there. So of the manufacturers, maybe Alpine. It sounds like Alpine is in play for them. Maybe that might be a game to go and get with Renault and all that. That's also there too. But I wouldn't be no selling a guy who's a mogul and has shown across the globe his reach and the Andretti name and the ability to get manufacturers. He had BMW for years in Formula E. He's doing Extreme E, which we're going to get into in the roundup. Got Honda. There was talk about him going to NASCAR with Dodge. I mean, Michael Andretti knows what he's doing. I wouldn't question him. And I think he has unfinished business in Formula One too, after what happened to him as a driver in Formula One, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Michael Andretti, this is this is a chance to prove himself as an owner in Formula One. Like you said, he had that failed attempt with McLaren back in the '90s, and that didn't work out so well. And back in 1994, and ended up coming back to the United States.
93.
1993. I'm sorry. Yeah, and yeah, so he ended up coming back to the States and never came back to Formula One after that. Of course, there's a lot of success with his name in this series. With his father winning a championship and winning several races in IndyCar as well, and he's the most winningest driver in America without an Indianapolis 500 win. So add all this in factor, I think he has a lot of credibility. And I think maybe for the owners, it's a little bit of gatekeeping. You talk about the guys like Red Bull, Christian Horner, Toto Wolff. I think they would welcome this challenge because they'd like for somebody with that marquee to be able to actually prove themselves and go up against the competition in Formula One. There's maybe some of the other teams, they are maybe more protective of the series, of their interests in it. So maybe that's their reaction to this, and they're maybe trying to, like you said, no sell Andretti here to try to protect their interests. But yeah, I think maybe if it was another owner or another person trying to make their way into F1 and they did not have that credibility, but they were willing to pay, I think maybe you would see more team bosses and CEOs that would probably be against it because they're like, oh, who's this guy? What's he wanting to do in F1, or maybe not. But I think just the Andretti name, I think, brings enough credibility, and I think with some of the teams, they would be very willing to be able to go in and accept him as an owner in Formula One. And I think the article, as I'm reading the same article you're talking about, and I find it funny they didn't mention Zach Brown or try to get Zach Brown's opinion, because he's like somebody like Andretti. They were former partners, right, with IndyCar. They had and sports cars as well. And they were helping Fernando Alonso in his IndyCar attempt at the Indy 500 back in 2017. So, and of course
they're partners
Brown,
in V8 supercars. Actually,
oh yeah, and that too. Yeah, I forgot about that too. So they would have been curious to see if they could gotten Zach Brown's opinion on this, and I'm sure he would have been welcoming and very positive it, of course, as business partners in other entities. So and he's also an American as well. So that was maybe in that article, maybe a missed opportunity to get that perspective, or maybe they're trying to get no bias in that. And of course, there maybe is some bias with the connections there in other series and entities for Andretti and Zach Brown.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows? Maybe Zach Brown wasn't available. Maybe he won around, but who knows? I think that would have been the right perspective because he's in the same spot to go and come from being a PR sponsor guy, along with being a team owner, to end up taking over one of the biggest entities in motorsports, which is McLaren, and trying to bring them back to their greatness, their times of greatness, which was for many years. That's a lot of pressure. But I think Michael Andretti wouldn't have given this thought or thought about going and buying Sauber if he didn't think it was possible. And I'm sure one of the first conversations, or many conversations, were had with Zach Brown to go and determine that Formula One has some viability. So, I mean, if you're going to no-sell him, I think it's a bad idea with Michael Andretti. You can just think about his driving career and the kind of bulldog that he was at the starter races, and how it didn't matter what spot he was in. He'll go and take the lead. He'll try to take the lead early. He's trying to go, and he's a mogul. There are two people that have come along in recent years that are younger moguls, and they're two great drivers, and they're two people that I've been a fan of. It's Tony Stewart and Michael Andretti, and you can see their reach across the world view of motorsports, and they're pretty damn successful. So I don't know. I guess when you're a really fucking good race car driver, but you also have a good business sense and you have good people around you, that's the thing. You have to surround yourself with good people. I guess you're able to go and do it in different areas. You don't have to be the driver you can be a driver for well past your time behind the wheel. Thinking about, like, in Tony's case with SRX, where they've already had a couple announcements. We're getting into the roundup. Ernie Francis, one of my favorite drivers these days. It'll sound like I like everybody. I definitely don't. But the people that I brought up, a lot of the people I brought up today seemingly are. Ernie Francis will be back for another year. He's driving Indy Lights this year for the Force Indy team. And so that'll be interesting after many years in Trans Am. Marco Andretti, who will be making another start in Indy 500, will also commit to SRX this year for another year. He won at Slinger Speedway, used up Luke Fenhouse to win that race. Ernie Francis won at Indianapolis Raceway Park, or whatever the hell they call it these days, last year for his first oval win. So two of the winners last year will be back. Of course, we know Tony is going to be back. I'm trying to think. Other than those three, those are three of the regulars. Doug Coby won, and then Clyde won amongst the five of the six winners, because Tony was the only multiple time winner. He won both of the races on dirt. He won his race at Eldora at his track, and then he also won Knoxville over Brian Brown. Had nothing to do with it. Michael Waltrip had it, and he's like, if Michael Waltrip beat me on dirt, he was going to go and like kill himself or whatever the hell he said. And then at Eldora, he basically had control because they were all wrecking each other behind him. So those were the first two announcements. We'll get more details as we get to next week for who else will be in the SRX for 2022. The Xfinity Series they have the Production Alliance Group 300. I think, was it Cold Custard will be driving a car for Bobby Dotter's team there. But thinking about last week's race, the Beef 300, the race result was Austin Hill winning over AJ Allmendinger, third consecutive second place finish for AJ. Austin Hill gets his first Xfinity win and leads the second most laps. Noah Gragson third, Riley Herbst fourth, Justin Allgaier fifth, Sheldon Creed sixth in his debut for Richard Childress as well. Alfredo, after having his passenger window fly out at the start of the race, gets back on the lead lap, finishes seventh. Ryan Sieg, Josh Bilicki for Mario Goslin's team. Brandon Brown, I'm not going to go further with that, finished 10th. Ty Gibbs, who's a championship contender, 11th, got stage points in both stages. Landon Castleton gets stage points, but he ended up finishing 14th. Barry only got stage points in the second stage, and Bruckshot Jones, those are regular contenders. Ryan Vargas ended up qualifying top 10, only got 18th place out of that. Daniel Hemrick, defending series champion, qualified on pole, won both stages, but in the end kind of got buried there. But he's not too far back in points. Sam Mayer got stage points in both stages, but wasn't a true factor. The rest of the people there rather wrecked or blew an engine. But Austin Hill now is 1 and 2 of the 3 main series in NASCAR at Daytona in the biggest race of the year, and he's already locked himself into the playoffs. So he's free rolling for the rest of the season. But Austin Hill over the last few years has actually become somewhat of a driver, and to drive for RCR, which is one of the better outfits in Xfinity, and get that initial win. Good look for him. We'll see what he's able to do, though, as the rest of the season goes on there, Josh.
Yeah, I think for Austin Hill is a great first win, and he's able to go out and not have to worry. I mean, it's the same thing with Cindric in the Cup Series. He's able to go out and basically do what he wants now after this race, and he's been proven to be pretty solid on intermediate tracks and Truck Series, and expect the same here in Xfinity as well. So go out and get the first win early while you can, and not have to worry about it. You're qualified for the playoffs, so now it's all about just preparing for the playoffs and just stacking up as many points as you can to improve your seating there. So that's what the name of the game is all about in NASCAR these days. And then, of course, I mean, there's a lot of interesting racing. I feel like the Xfinity has the best racing for super speedways, and I mean, we've said it before, it has the best racing for overall in this series, or between trucks and cup as well in that conversation. But I think the racing was pretty good overall, and then of course you had your wrecks and all that stuff, and then of course at the end you had the big wreck with Myatt Snyder getting turned over into the fence, like Austin Dillon, like Kyle Larson 2013. There is the second time last decade we've had the engine block come out of the car chassis and land somewhere on the track. I mean, thankfully this time around didn't exit the track and go out into the grandstands like it did in 2013, and we didn't have any car parts or tires go out there as well, like in that crash. So at least everything did its job technically with that, and he was able to get out of the car okay and not having issues. He was right in front of Michael Jordan and Bubba Wallace as they were over hanging out right there. So thankfully no one got injured in that camp as well. I think
suspension pieces went through
yeah.
Denny Hamlin's grill of his motorhome too.
Yeah, that is true. Yes, and I think Bubba was like taking pictures and doing photography right in that area. And I think if you look in the cameras, slow it down, you look really closely. He was there trying to run away from the car parts. I mean, nothing like I mean, if a regular photographer was there, would have had to do the same thing. But of course, the driver there makes it a big deal because if you get injured, you can't race and everything, and have to heal up and recover and all that stuff. So thankfully nobody got hurt, but it always brings back. I mean, we talked about it before, like the Xfinity, the super speedway racing, and the crashes and the carnage and everything. And I mean, in this race, like I mean, it wasn't that bad until the end, of course. But when it happens, is always we always think the worst. And I mean, it goes back to what I've been saying the last couple of years, like. I mean, if they figured out a way to separate the cars, I think maybe some of this wrecking would go away. Not sure about the airborne crashes because it's probably bound to happen, especially at these speeds. But I think the chances of crashing go lower when you have less separation, or more separation between the cars. And I think if they figure out a way to go back to tandems, like I've said before, then I mean maybe we don't have these type of crashes anymore or something like that. But although we saw those crashes happen anyways, and of course the Kyle Larson crash is basically what ended tandem racing for the most part in Xfinity, because they basically gave it up after that season and changed the rules so that they wouldn't tandem like that all the way around a racetrack anymore. Although these cars, of course, are naturally wanting to tandem because of the bumpers still lining up and everything for the Xfinity cars. So I mean, it was a good race overall. Just unfortunate it had to end like that. Of course, Austin Hill gets his win in the Xfinity, and now goes. He's got a leg up on everybody right now and can go relax. Well, not really relax, but he doesn't have to worry about having to qualify for the playoffs now, and can go focus on just increasing his standing in the field.
Oh, sorry. I was going to go and say that he has the ability to go and accumulate those points, as you talked about, Josh. In regards to Cindric, we talked about it with John Hunter, who there were sweeps. I think there were sweeps in all three races of the stages. You had John Hunter in the trucks, you had Hamrick in the Xfinity, and then Martin Truex in the Cup race. And that's accumulating those stage points, the playoff points. Kyle Larson used that to a T to go and get himself that Cup championship. That's one piece of that Cup championship. You think about the Xfinity Series, even though Cindric was a dominant figure, once you got to the end of the season, grand scheme of things, they were right there, had to go and win it to go and get it done. And then in the Truck Series, going and getting them stage points, it does mean something for John Hunter to try to go and get that elusive truck championship and join his father as a champion in NASCAR, similar to the Jarretts. Similar to some other families or the Pearsons, amongst others that have been able to go and get those championships there. Going to the Desert X Prix, going and talking about that was Rosberg with what's it called? I'm trying to remember who. I'm not trying to look at the highlights. I don't care. I want to see. Yeah, there we go. Alan Kutulinski and Johan Kristofferson go and win over Leila Sanz and Carlos Sainz for the Spanish team. And then third place was X44 for Cristina Gutierrez and Sebastian Loeb. Fourth place was the Chip Ganassi Racing GMC Hummer EV Extreme E team, Sarah Price and Kyle LeDuc. Fifth place was the debuting McLaren team of Emma Gilmore and Tanner Faust. Sixth was Tamara Molinaro and Oliver Bennett for Excite Energy Racing. The Genesis Andretti United effort of Katie Munnings and Timmy Hansen. Jutta Kleinschmidt and Nasser Al-Attiyah for Apt Cupra. The JBXC for Jensen Button, Molly Taylor, Kevin Hansen. Kevin Hansen got hurt. So we'll see what happens with him and before the next race if he's able to come back. And then Christine GZ also got hurt during qualifying, and Lance Woolridge, they weren't able to race because she wrecked the car in qualifying and got hurt. So that was the results of the Desert X Prix. Next race will be in May. So we'll see what happens in regards to some of the drivers that have been affected by the incidents that took place there in Saudi on the track. For sure, go and get into Rally Sweden this weekend. Trying to go and I'll go and delete that. Yeah, trying to get into World Rally Championship for this year. Got, of course, Sebastian Loeb won the first race of the season over Sebastian Ogier, Cali Rovanpera, Craig Breen, Terry Neuville. So basically, Rovanpera, Breen, and Neuville are your championship standings because the other two are not running every race. So you have that. Trying to go and get a entry list for Rally Sweden here. Breen is Sweden. Preview Rally Sweden. Let's see if we get. No, they won't give us an entry list. So that's team and driver. I'm gonna go and find. Trying to go and find out here entry list there, but results and standings going back to the last race, which was Rally Monte Carlo. Sebastian Loeb won the first race, of course, for Ford. His first race for Ford over defending world champion Sebastian Ogier. Rovanpera, Breen Neuville, Greensmith Mickelson, Katsuya Evans, Formo, Tanak, and Oliver Solberg are your full drivers here. Actually, there's Mickelson and Grazen for Skoda getting points. So we'll see what happens with the Rally Sweden and who can come out on top in regards to that. Go to MotoGP, and I don't need Video Pass. I just want MotoGP. That's what I want. 10 things you probably know about Brad Binder. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, the launch of the VR46 team is taking place tomorrow. Trying to go a three-way American attack. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Waiting for someone to go and, yeah, register to watch a video. Shows the website sucks. Next, Livio Supo as new team manager. And then we have here, I'm going to go and get some news, American Racing. So, Sean Dillon Kelly. Wow. So that's pretty cool. Cameron Bobier, multiple Moto America champion in the Superbike class. is in his second year, and then SDK is going over to race in GP or in Moto 2. So that's really, really cool for that team and that opportunity. So testing, you had Moto 2 and Moto 3 testing. You have Pecco Bagnaia and Ducati re-upping for 2 more years. So there's a lot of good news coming along in regards to the Moto GP and Moto 2 and Moto 3. In regards to Moto 2, trying to go and out the videos. I'm just trying to get results. That's all I want. Results. See if they give us anything here on the 20. They don't have 2020. Yeah, they don't have this year in regards to testing, but we will see what testing leads us to once we get to Qatar here, I think next week, actually, which is kind of a Ducati track. So we'll see what Pecco Bagnaia and company can do there. I mentioned it a little bit earlier with Wayne Rainey, the legend, 3-time world 500cc world champion, was on his way to a 4th consecutive championship when he got it severely injured at Misano, and was left paralyzed from the waist down in 1993, and he been able to ride a modified sport bike, Yamaha, a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, and now they're going to modify his YZF 500 Yamaha from 1992, his last world championship, and he'll be able to ride it for the Goodwood Festival of Speed, which is insane to think for somebody who only has hand pedals or hand controls can do all that. But Wayne Rainey is an inspiration to many of us with his ability and with his strength to go and ride that bike at that track, which is very narrow and tight. Get over, I guess, certain fears for sure. Before we move on to ACS, any thoughts on anything that was out there, Josh, in regards to the roundup, or you're good?
Don't have any other thoughts other than the Xfinity. Haven't caught up on any other things, but yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna let you go and talk about the Beef 300, and then lead into the ACS talk for both Xfinity and Cup. I don't know if you're going to go algorithm here because we haven't been there in 2 years. It might be an interesting thing to go with algorithm. So I'll let you go and free form your deal here for next couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, well, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, we haven't been here in a few years, so it's almost like, I want to say it's like going to a new track, but I feel like it is, especially with the way things have played out, not being here at this racetrack. But I mean, I think, this weekend, I mean, I lean back towards colleague racing because we don't have a lot of the players that we've had in recent years. We don't have Penske here. Chase Briscoe isn't in this series anymore. So I look at the colleague cars, Junior Motorsports come out of the gate and have good speed here at California. I mean, I look at AJ Allmendinger and specifically reigning series champion Daniel Hemrick. I mean, probably Noah Gragson. I think he races well on tracks that have a lot of tire wear. I mean, look what he was able to do at Homestead last year in 2020. He was pretty fast at both of those tracks. So I expect a lot of from Noah Gragson this weekend. Josh Berry did well at Michigan. Should have won that race last year. California is basically a sister track to Michigan. Of course, the track that has a lot more tire wear than Michigan, but I expect Josh Berry to do well regardless. Sheldon Creed might be someone to watch as well. Really, I mean, it's mostly just the Chevys. You got Joe Gibbs cars, Trevor Bayne coming back to the series after a long hiatus, Brandon Jones coming as well. And then, of course, Ty Gibbs, who is always a threat in this series. So there's a lot of names that you could really pick out of a hat here. And we'll do that with the algorithm here in a minute to make these picks. But I mean, I feel like me personally, I'll go with AJ Allmendinger to win. He's done really well, and actually, yeah, he did win at Michigan back last August or last fall in Xfinity. So I would expect him to be up front in this race going forward this weekend, and should expect a lot out of him here. So I'll pick him. Put that in the algorithm here in a second. Just copy the entry list numbers. Then we'll open up Microsoft Excel. Go Excel there. And then replace the numbers here, and we get our results. So the algorithm, drum roll, picks Timmy Hill, the number 38 Ford, to go out and win this race. Steve Addington, crew chief, Sieg Racing. That could be a solid pick, but I doubt it would happen. Although, I mean, the C cars are pretty good. This could be a track for them, but we'll see what happens here. And then, of course, in the Cup Series, same deal. We haven't been here in 2 years. I mean, the last time we went here, Alex Bowman went out and dominated this race. And we saw Hendrick run really well at this track back in 2020. And I mean, initially, I would have thought the 88 car would have been really fast, but then they ended up not really being all that fast. So this could be a track for Hendrick to come out and come out to the party and establish their stake in the series this year. Could also be another chance for Ford to continue their dominance from Daytona. Especially with the way the drafting might work out here at California, if there is any, maybe on the straights, but not so much in the corners. Think for the Toyotas, they have to be able to prove that they can run well on the week-to-week basis for all their teams. Can Bubba Wallace put back the results that he had from last week? Can he repeat those results and be able to do all that stuff? So there's a lot at play here, of course, and we may keep this track overall because they're talking about turning it into a short track, and we maybe if they find the clash to be sustainable in some way, then at LA Coliseum or something or another track in California, maybe we don't turn this track into the short track, but we'll see how they race this weekend and how this car races with a lot of tire wear. It could be a factor, especially with this car not having an inner liner. We'll see if blowouts become a factor and if we have harder crashes from blowouts as usual. I mean, there was one race like 2014 where they had a lot of tire failures. And then that led to a green-white checkered finish here. In that one, that was Kyle Busch over Kyle Larson. In that one, I remember that from back then. Let me go ahead and for algorithm, go ahead and post or make that, and then I'll make my pick. So last time I picked, and then the algorithm pick. Now we'll have the algorithm pick. So 48 car picks Alex Bowman to repeat back-to-back starts at California Auto Club Speedway. So it's a very, very plausible pick that could happen. I myself will stay Hendrick, but I'm going to pick Kyle Larson to win this race this weekend.
So you've hedged full Hendrick, defending series champion, young money, California kid, to go and get another win at ACS, and the most recent winner at ACS, Alex Bowman, as the algorithm pick. I'll go and bring up this right here. There's only 36 cars, and so all the chartered cars are in the race, so there's no open cars, which is disappointing. We'll see if that's the case at Vegas, where I think they have a little bit more higher purse, if anybody shows up for that. In regards to the Vegas race, I'm going to go with, in regards to a winner for this race. We don't have any practice here, but for a winner in this race, I am going to take Joey Logano. I'm going to go with Joey Logano to win at ACS. I think he'll have AAA. The Auto Club, of course, it's Auto Club Speedway. He has the Auto Club sponsorship, like Robert Height, who won, and that's something I missed there in the roundup, which we'll probably round back to here in a second. The Winter Nationals took place there last week. I think Logano recovers and gives Penske 2 for 2 to start the season. Penske, of course, made this track. Give himself a chance to go and get back some points that he lost. I also look at, the Toyotas. I look at Martin Truex Jr. That would be another person that I would venture to say would have a good shot at California ACS. My wild card pick, and I'm trying to manifest this no matter what. I'm going to manifest it until it happens, is Chase Briscoe. He's run well at California. I think the tracks that are a little rougher, where you have to actually move your lines around, I'm curious what this car is going to be like in regards to running the wall. I think it's a good track for him to go and possibly go and get that first win in his career. And what is it? This weekend is still a Mahindra tractor car. The Production Alliance group will be on the 41 of Cold Custard, but they were talking about the marketing there for both Cold Custard and Chase Briscoe. They announced a sponsorship deal coming into this year. I mean, NHRA, I'm going to go and round back before we get into Josh talking about his exploits in the Daytona 500 iRacing version. You had Justin Ashley won the Top Fuel at Pomona. You had Robert Height win in Funny Car in the Winter Nationals. Just to go back, Justin Ashley beat Austin Prock in Top Fuel with Mike Green, Tommy DeLago. So has a couple of guys from Don Schumacher Racing tuning on him. And then you have Robert Height beating Ron Capps. Ron Capps got him on the tree, but Robert Height had the elapsed time. He beat him on the ET. Ron Capps ran 333.82, but wasn't able to catch up. He lost the elapsed time by, 2/21 thousandths of a second there, which he had 19 thousandths on the starting line. So that's crazy. 3 thousandths of a second was the difference at the line for Robert Height to go and get his 54th career win over the defending series champion and current now new owner of his own outfit, Ron Capps and Napa deal. Capps, Dean Antonelli, and John Medlin. And then Eric Anders was looking for blood in regards to the elite, or not elite, the KB racing team. She's elite racing team. After losing the championship to Greg Anderson, she won her 34th Pro Stock win and got a special Hearst Shifter trophy for the 900th Pro Stock race ever. They'll be racing this weekend at Firebird International Raceway for the second of their races here in the NHRA season. Then there'll be a couple weeks off before the the Gator Nationals in Gainesville, and then they'll have another couple of weeks off before they go to the Four Wides in Vegas, the Spring Nationals at Houston, and the other four-way nationals at Charlotte at the end of April, early May. So it's kind of staggered after this race in Arizona in regards to the NHRA. I'm going to add that here. And then, so Josh, how were your exploits? I know we talked about your first attempt at the Daytona 500, but how did it end up going in the second attempt in your fix setup, or if you did go for that?
Yeah, so the first one didn't turn out so well. My original strategy was to go qualify in the back and then try and see if I didn't even actually qualify. I just didn't take a time and started out in the back. And I thought it was going to go like regular restrictor plate racing for some reason. And I thought I'd be able to catch up quickly to the end of the pack and go through the field, but it didn't turn out the way, and ended up getting caught up in someone else's wrecks. I was behind a guy and he got loose, and then I went towards the wall, and then he turned back right and overcorrected back into the wall and got me, and pretty much ended my race there. I tried to go out for a little bit more, but just didn't have any speed, and I didn't feel like riding around the track at 165 miles an hour, 155 miles an hour, well off the pace, and end up being in the way of everybody else. So I was like, there's no point in this, and I decided to hang it up for that attempt. And then of course we talked about it and came back later and at 9 p.m. and decided to do what Dale Jr. says and stay up front. So I went and qualified and qualified ninth, and then ended up finishing in sixth place. So managed to actually make it through the full 200 laps in the Daytona 500 on iRacing in the fixed setup edition. For the most part, I mean, it was a lot of single file stuff. I think everybody was just trying to get to the end and survive. Fuel strategy did come into play at the end. We were all trying to save. I was good, I felt like, and I made a move to go up to the front and got up into second with like 20 laps to go. And I was there probably about until 10 to go, and then some other guys started making moves, and then kind of got shuffled out of the not shuffled out of the draft, but got shuffled to the back, and ended up in 10th. And then caution came out with like 5 laps to go. And then was able to pack it, with fuel, and so I wouldn't have to worry about running out of gas, because that's happened to me a few times, because I got this little crew chief app on my computer that I run alongside for fuel strategy, and it said I was good, the numbers were good, but I've had a few times in the past where it said the numbers were good, but then ended up running out of gas off of turn 4 or something like that on other tracks, and ended up with a bad finish there. So I didn't want that to happen. So I went and pitted, but then managed to get in sixth place. Got tagged on the backstretch on the last lap in a wreck, but managed to keep everything straight and was able to finish in sixth place. So at least I was able to finish this time. Would always want to win, but it's always good to be able to make it through the entire race and get a finish instead of crashing out like I've done before. There was one incident like about lap 120 where we were on a restart. I was in the outside lane, and across the start finish line, I was about ready to shift in from second to third gear, and I made a mistake and downshifted back into first, and immediately spun the tires, went left, and hit the guy next to me. Luckily, didn't take a whole lot of damage, about 12 and a half seconds of repairs in iRacing, so that's barely anything. But I think some other guys behind me did take damage and had to follow the race. So sorry to that, but I guess it happens and everything. But that was the only major incident for me. But managed not to have any other incidents or anything like that. So glad to be able to finish the race and take it home and everything, and be able to at least not be unhappy about it and everything, and be satisfied with the efforts and everything. So glad to be able to do it, and hopefully we come back next year. Later in the year we have iRacing Indy 500, so there's that too. Maybe the Open Wheels 500 if Tanner has everything together and all that stuff. But always gonna come back next year and do the Daytona 500 and iRacing. So always glad to do it. And Dale Jr. was actually in the same time slot as me, but in a different split. I was like several splits below him, and he was in like the 4th highest split. So he was playing at the same time. Maybe if my I rating and safety rating were a little bit better, could have been in the same race. But he was in that one as well. I think he finished like 19th or whatever, or something like that, and he was like, I don't know, 20 laps down. So he ended up I guess failing to finish the race. But it was always cool when you know somebody else that is pretty famous that's running at the same time as you, even if they're not in the same actual race as you. But they're still running the same event. So that's pretty cool as well. And that's always the fun part about iRacing and all that stuff and everything. So glad to be able to do it, of course, with the iRacing Daytona 500.
At least you were able to get that finish that you wanted after we discussed your initial run earlier in the day. Post Daytona 500, getting your Daytona 500 and getting a top 10 finish. Hopefully a sign of things to come. Progression up through the field too. You put yourself in a spot to try to win it. So Josh getting a top 10 in his fixed setup, Daytona 500 on iRacing. I'm sure there's more to come in regards to the Indy 500, as you said. Tanner's very busy being a PR guy at Indianapolis Raceway Park, or whatever the hell they call it, Lucas Oil Raceway Park, or whatever the hell they call it. We'll see if he's going to go run another one. With that, we will end this episode of Gripster Podcast. We thank you for listening. Trying and going through all this trash is convenient, but whatever. I'll throw to you, Josh. Where can we find you? Not only on social media, but where can we find you for your motorsport streams?
Yeah, as always, go on Twitch TV/usailor2 and watch my streams, and sure to follow and get notifications, I guess, when I go live. So you can follow that there. Of course, the iRacing Daytona 500, both attempts are still up there. So if you want, you can look through that, scroll through, or skip through that and see all the highlights, I guess, and the various points of the race, and you can watch all my stuff there. And then, of course, for Twitter, you can follow me at JP Huffline and see all the different takes I have on racing and other things, and other sports, and all the things I'm interested in. Go follow on there, interact, and have good discussion on there. So that's where you can follow me on social media.
Yeah, follow Josh. I mean, he knows his stuff. Very analytical, more technical than I am. So if you want more of the math side and also aero and the whole bit, I mean, Josh knows his stuff. So definitely go and follow him. And he has good takes. He is a diehard Jacksonville Jaguars fan, which probably is very tough on your health. They've not really given you a whole lot to root for. Same way as my 49ers have been tough on my health the last 2 decades, basically. So definitely follow Josh. He knows his stuff. He also gets to drive, so he's getting that experience. So I figure we'll get more details as we go along, depending on the track we go to, coming into that particular week. For me, you can follow me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. Follow me on Facebook. You can follow me on Podbean at Philip G. Matthew. We're going to have that show uploaded and saved here shortly. And follow the Gripster podcast at Gripster Pod, capital G, capital S, capital P. We are on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and TuneIn. So we're basically anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find a Gripster podcast. If you want to find it, even if you don't want to find it, well, you can go second. In the end, you have to have the care and compassion, and you don't have it because you're trying to play some sort of game. It is what it is, and it tells you where you are. So with that, we will end this episode of the Gripster podcast. Went over a lot of stuff. We went over 3 of the major series tonight, and we got more to come. Next week, we'll have recaps of the IndyCar race at St. Petersburg. We'll have a recap of the race at California for the Xfinity and for Cup. And then anything else that's coming up here next week, we'll have on the Gripster podcast. For Josh, I'm Phil. Thank you for listening. Take care of one another. Take care of yourself and one another. And we'll be back to go and do episode 103, talking about all this racing that we have going on since racing season has taken off. Take care and God bless.